off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Accoli.
No, he's a good human being, is what he would say about himself, I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin, would you? Jesus.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm gonna have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center. Probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
And we will. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey, Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast, where we currently sit at 100 and the Gordy Dwyer of subscribers. We are number 32 for the Montreal Canadiens, back from 2002 to 2004. 2003 to 2004. Played 13 games, had 53 penalty minutes, and was a -2. He also played, by the way, with the Hartford Wolfpack at one point in time. He's had a wonderful career. Anyway, you can also subscribe to the audio shortly after this is up. And it is a pretty busy day with two major events. So we'll just, first of all, we should say hello. Let's not be rude in our thing, right? Devin, stop being rude.
Yeah, you asshole. Introduce the guest first, Dick.
Can we mute that guy? No. That's Joel.
Yeah, who brought him?
Joel, what's going on?
Not much, gentlemen. Like I said in the before we got going here. Another day, another fabulous Habs win that I get to join you, you beautiful suckers, and talk about and break down here. I'm stoked. I appear to be their lucky charm every time that I've come on this podcast to talk about the Habs. We're coming off a big win, so we'll just keep the momentum going, and it looks good, man. I'm stoked. Lots of good news out of both of my clubs. Lots of big news with the Canucks as well. So we're gonna have a lot to chew on today for sure.
Yep. Yes. I am not the beautiful one. That's Sean and Devin. So, hello to Sean.
Hello. Yeah. This is kind of a monumental podcast for me. This will be the last one I have in this place. So by the time next time I'm on, I'll be in our new condo and have to figure out how to make it sound good there.
Bye, house.
Yes,
Devin?
and yeah, I'm at my house, and had a busy morning with Amp Advantage, but once again, happy I can make some time for some hockey talk here and listen to Joel gush about his fourth line.
Yes, as the Montreal Canadiens, who let's just be honest, no one had the Montreal Canadiens one win away from the Stanley Cup Final, even in this series. I was the closest probably in saying that this would go 7, but I still picked Vegas. So, and the series isn't over yet, so I could still be right. But is this series? Maybe let's start here. I mean, maybe we'll start with Joel, because I know where his answer will go, but I'm going to be curious. Is this more about...
You don't know me.
I know you. I know you enough to know where I think this answer is going to go, but I still want to hear it. Is this more about the Canadiens, or is this more about the Vegas Golden Knights?
Well, I mean, for me, it's all about the Habs, right? Like, it's got to be. The way Carey Price is playing, the way the team is rebounded without even having their head coach to make those adjustments kind of on the fly sort of thing, right? They have to go back into the dressing room, get a FaceTime fired up, and then talk to Ducharme to try and make any adjustments on the fly. And I'm not saying that Richardson and Burroughs and the coaching staff there is incompetent. Certainly not. But, not having that steady voice that you've had all season moving up to this point is a big obstacle, right? And I feel like in Game 4, you kind of saw that flesh itself out a little bit. Like I felt like the Habs definitely outplayed them and then just didn't get the result. And you saw in this game, I feel like the Habs clearly outplayed them again and they got the result, right? And just going back to something that I said on the last podcast there, and I pitched the question to you guys, do you felt like Carey Price stole that victory in Game 4? Right? And I don't feel that in last night's game. I don't really feel like Carey Price stole them a victory. Right? And I said he's probably good for one, probably two games in any playoff round where he's going to get you, he's going to steal a win or two, right? So for me, I still expect that Carey Price is going to still be able to steal the Habs a win here, whether it be Game 6 or Game 7. But for me, yeah, it's definitely an indication of the Habs playing the right style of hockey at the right time. I mean, Vegas is just, it seems like with the trouble in their nets and the question marks there and everything going on there, they haven't been able to get it going offensively with their forwards. And the big question mark in net has just kind of rattled their confidence for me.
Yeah, talk about. Go for it, John.
This seems very, very familiar to what they went through last year. They ran into a hot goalie, and then all their confidence on whether or not they could score went away. And you look at where they're getting a lot of their shots from. It's not right in front of the net. They're not finding ways to try and jam it in. And I think that's what they need to do. And that's what Montreal's doing. If you look at when you go to Natural Stat Trick and you look at their heat maps in terms of where the shots are coming from, with Montreal, it's basically slot down, like hash marks down, right in the slot area, and then Vegas is a lot more a little more spread out. Like they still have it, but it's not nearly as concentrated as the Habs. And I think that's one of the big things here is that I think they might carry prices in their heads, and they're trying to get that perfect shot, and then which is allowing the strong defensive Habs to be able to keep it to the outside.
My question, I know we're talking about the Canadiens right now, but my question is, why did they go back to Fleury? Would have Leonard been a better fit for this game? Because obviously he played well enough for the win. I'm not saying this is Fleury's fault by any means, but the back and forth between the goaltenders, it baffles me. I just don't get it on their part. But overall, about Montreal, I thought they played an amazing away game. They were on them.
Perfect road game.
There you go. They were on them right off the bat. They got the crowd out of it. The crowd was not into it at the very beginning, and they were able to just snuff any sort of momentum that Vegas was trying to throw their Montreal's way. So overall, I'm not surprised that they won in the fashion that they did because of to me, it's all about the starts. The first 10 minutes of the game, the first couple shifts that you have, if you're a player, you got to make sure that you have your feet under you and you're moving, you're dumping and chasing, you're on the defense, you're making sure that they have zero time to move around or even think, and that's what they did. And God, that's exactly what you need to do in a road game. So, and that's what happened, I believe, in Game 4 in Montreal, was that they. Vegas came out flying, and Montreal had a hard time with that. So I think if they want to be successful, it's all about the start. It really is. But I'm curious what you guys' thoughts are on DeBoer going with Fleury over Lehner.
To me, that just came across as that Fleury is his guy. They gave Fleury a game off to sort of try and reset mentally, and then they went back with him. That's my take on that. I think that's what he was thinking, even though I think the right move would have been to stick with Leonard.
Joel?
Go ahead, Joel.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, from what I've heard, DeBoer was thinking about the team traveling, and obviously that's something that the Vegas Golden Knights haven't done a lot of this season, right? They haven't traveled outside of their time zone a whole lot, right? Even when they do, they're talking, you're talking Mountain Time, you're talking Central Time. They're not really hitting the East Coast. Montreal's obviously playing in the Canadian division. They've been used to traveling out to the West Coast quite a bit throughout the season. So for me, I thought they were kind of used to that. They're used to the grind and getting up and getting into the flights and getting into the hotels late and getting rest when you can, skipping a morning skate kind of thing. But maybe, and this is what I've heard, maybe Vegas is just a little bit fatigued in having to travel all that way, right? And one of the reasons that I heard is just, with a late game and then you fly out and you have to play in Vegas after Game 4, they just wanted to give everybody a little bit of extra break and keep the goalies fresh and what have you. But I'm kind of with you. Like, I think that once DeBoer made the decision to go with Leonard in Game 4, and Leonard didn't play bad. Like, he made a number of nice saves and, like, it was good enough to win them the game, obviously, right? So I'm with you where I was kind of surprised that that Marc-Andre Fleury started Game 5. Now, that being said, there's just something about, I don't know if it's the way he's always played or if it's just this postseason, but there's something about Marc-Andre Fleury in the net where he just looks uncomfortable, doesn't he? Like, he's bobbling the puck. He just looks like he's either too comfortable or he's uncomfortable. Now, I can't determine which one it is, but yeah, there's definitely been some gaffes and some close calls. And you saw it again last night where I can't remember what the play was, but puck was centered and it went right into his feet. He had no clue where it was. He was just standing still. His defenseman cleared the puck basically right off the red line or the goal line there. But I was a bit surprised for sure to see Fleury, but that's kind of the thing is, like, I don't think that game or a lot of those goals or anything were Marc-Andre Fleury's fault last night. But it sure does put a lot of pressure on Pete DeBoer because, like, what do you do now, right? Like, no matter what you do, if you don't get a win here in Game 6 and then Game 7, you made the wrong decision. It doesn't matter how well your goalie played or how this or that and the other thing, man. Like, if they don't win this series against Montreal, it's going to be looked back on and go, like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you had it. Like, your goalie was playing well enough to win, but you decided to change things up. And I don't know. I mean, I guess with any goalie tandem in the NHL, like, the team kind of gets used to playing in front of both goaltenders and their styles and that. But to switch things up in the middle of a playoff series just for shits and giggles, for me, I mean, I didn't understand it for sure. And that might be the straw that broke the camel's back for Pete DeBoer because, if I were management, I'd definitely be questioning that decision for sure.
I just want to share something from Shay. Hey Shay, sorry. I'm like, what the heck is? But this is. I thought this was interesting. This little tweet here. For what it's worth, Fleury has faced the most rebound attempts against of any goaltender in the regular season, now in the playoffs in all situations. I don't know. I the first goal. I'm not like. I don't like when I watched Leonard in Game 4, it just that whole defense. Leonard just looked a lot calmer than what Fleury was even looking like. I mean, I guess I know that it's not like like Fleury didn't give up like this large gaff from the blue line, but his rebound control it hasn't been awesome. Like that's one thing. Like the Vegas defense looks like they're in chaos when the Canadiens are in front of the net. So I agree. I would have went back to Leonard and just rode the hot hand. But but my argument is I would have stuck with Fleury after Game 4. So hey Shay, sorry. I'm like, what the heck is that?
Little delay there. I like it.
Oh, hey. Oh, the sound of my voice.
Man.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know. I would have stuck with Fleury all the way, but if you went with Leonard and I just would have rode the hot hand. But I think the other thing that's happening here too is how many times of the Montreal, including Cole Caulfield, But how many times have that Montreal Canadiens forwards just have been blowing by this defense? Like, if this was football, like, this is like Tyreek Hill versus a secondary, some average secondary. Like, they're blowing past them. There's so many breakaways. Byron, Anderson's been in all alone. Caulfield, Toffoli, like. It's
the smaller players that have been definitely blowing past that defense. It's their foot speed, their acceleration, and sorry, I just want to touch on the Fleury Lehner thing, because I would have gone Lehner as well. You got to ride, like Kevin, like you said, you got to ride the hot goalie. You got to make sure that to me, it makes more sense if you think about the entirety of the series. If you went with Lehner, stick with him because he won, and then if he loses, then you can go back to your number one goalie or the goalie that you prefer. But yeah, it just makes zero sense to me. And it's also, you're talking about Fleury being a kind of a just all over the place. That's not Lehner's game. Lehner's a big boy, and he's just a blocker. That's all he is. He just takes up a lot of the net, and he does a good job doing it. So I think that putting a bit more responsibility on the defense, kind of tying into what you're talking about, to make sure that they are back and not relying on a Fleury to come out of the net, or Lehner. When he comes out of the net, he stops it and then he gets right back in every single time. He doesn't fuck around with it like Fleury does. And right now, Fleury, to Joel's point, it's either not having enough confidence or overconfident. And to me, it just is the fact that he's not confident at all, but he's trying to be. And that is going to be the big difference within, or it could be the big difference within Game 6, where he could be coughing up the puck. Or what if they do go back to Lehner? Man, it's just the carousel within that. You're kind of putting yourself in a tough spot if you're Peter DeBoer. But back to the Montreal forwards. Yeah, they're just small, pesky. They got speed, and they're able to get by them. Well, even Josh Anderson, got in alone and somewhat alone, and was a beneficiary of the first goal. So yeah, I don't know. It really does baffle me that that defense is having that many fits.
All three of the Habs goals, that wasn't like, you take out Nick Suzuki's empty netter, all three of the other goals were scored by trailers. It was, you had Cole Caulfield with that just amazing pass from Corey Perry. You had Kotkaniemi coming in after the Anderson breakaway, and then you had Eric Stahl on just coming in, and no one took him, and he was wide open. As soon as he got that puck, you knew that puck was going in the net. Like, it's a lot there. It really feels like Vegas is puck watching. It really feels like Vegas is collapsing a little too much towards the puck carrier, and don't have their heads enough on a swivel to pick up open men that Montreal is finding, and they're being able to capitalize on just being a half step ahead of Vegas when that happens. And because as I said, it wasn't necessarily the breakaway that was the scoring. But it created the chance and created the opportunity. And Vegas is pushing too. After they went down one, that first goal was a huge mistake, because after that they were pressing, and both those other goals came off of turnovers where Montreal players were a little bit far behind the defenseman and had a step on them once they got the puck.
Yeah, that's something that I noticed big time throughout these last couple games, is that it seems like when there's either an odd man rush or just like a breakout offensive opportunity for the Habs on the rush, it seems to me like you saw it on the Stahl goal, and you saw it, I believe it was on the Caulfield goal, where two players are streaking in, and there's 2 or 3 Vegas Golden Knights, but nobody picks up that trailer. Like on both plays, on the Stahl play and on the, I believe it was the Perry to Caulfield goal, the defenseman's right there. Like, he's right there beside Cole Caulfield. They're right there beside Eric Stahl, and neither one, went to make the effort to lift the stick or stay with him or anything like that. So That's a difference maker for me, for sure.
I will go back here with Canadiens in a second, but I want to ask: is the Mark Stone banging his stick in frustration that big of a deal?
No, that's ridiculous. So I remember talking about this. I think it was McKinnon with him freaking out, and it was also the JT Miller.
JT Miller.
That was freaking out. I love seeing that passion. Those players in that locker room know who Mark Stone is. He's a passionate guy. He wants to win, and if it's not going their way, showing that passion, I have no problem with it. It just solidifies the fact that he cares, and he backs up that he cares. If it's a player that isn't producing that well and is freaking out, it's like, okay, you're having a temper tantrum. Probably not the best to show it on ice. You got to figure your shit out. But if you're producing and you are making a difference like Mark Stone has in this playoffs, then to me it's a non-story.
I want my players to be have that emotion and have that drive and be pissed off when you're losing and you're not playing well. Because if you're not, why do I want you on my team? Because that means you don't. I question more than that you care. So I would much rather see those emotional outbursts, especially when it's a frustrating game, than not to see it.
Yeah, so for me, there's two things to that. Now, when you saw that outburst from Mark Stone, I believe that was the 3-0 goal, and he had just given away the puck badly, which cost him the goal, right? So that's obviously something to get frustrated about. Down 3-0 against Carey Price, like you're going to have to score 4 goals against Carey Price to win the game. You're probably not going to do that. Like he knew at that point the game's probably over, right? And there's a big difference, at least for me, with getting frustrated at doing a play like that and giving away a goal that just cost you basically the game because it was 3-0 at that point, like I said. And that's fine. You can show frustration and show that you're pissed off and that you made the wrong move and you're upset about it. But there's a big difference between that and doing that in a 1-goal game. That's the big difference between those two scenarios for me anyways. In a 1-goal game, the game's still right there. You're still within reach, that. And if you were to explode like that, that's sending the wrong message down the bench to all your teammates because he wears the C. They're all looking up to him. And for him to show that level of frustration in a 1-goal game, it'd be like, well, shit, what do we do now, right? But in a 3-goal game, I think I'm with you guys. If I were a Vegas Golden Knights fan, I'd want to see my captain pissed off after giving a goal away like that, right? Slam his stick a little bit and jar the gate and lay a few F-bombs like a la JT Miller in Vancouver. But, I don't have a problem with it myself. Obviously, if Mark Stone turns into a JT Miller where it's happening every other game, then that's a different story. But yeah, just showing a little bit of fire up under his ass and in his belly there last night. Didn't have any problem with that at all.
No, I didn't. Oh, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, and when you're not producing, like basically all of the Vegas forwards are, you're going to be frustrated. Like it's not like if they finally got a goal from Pacioretty, but it was far too late. And he's the only one of their top 5, 6 forwards that is scoring. So I can guarantee you that it's like Mark Stone's not alone with how he feels, and that everyone's frustrated with that.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it either. I mean, it happens. It's in a playoff game. For the first time in the Vegas Golden Knight area, this crowd started to boo them a little bit. But quite frankly, the crowd in Vegas is as much as everybody has been so impressed with it. I have totally felt with this series specifically, they have been nervous from the start. From game 1 on, they are not coming across with that same confidence for whatever reason. I don't know if it was the Canadiens, but they're just they sounded kind of nervous throughout.
Yeah, and I touched base on that in the last podcast we did after, Game 3, I believe, where I said, there's 17,000-18,000 people in the arena at T-Mobile in Vegas there, and they just scored a goal, and it's like everybody's, looking around like there's something more important going on. Like I could barely hear the crowd, and you get that coin slot machine stupid goal horn thing that they got before they announced the goal, which is so extra, but yeah, I really kind of felt like, once they're down a goal, man, like it's really hard to get a crowd like that back into it because, like we talked about last time, they're not diehard hockey fans, right? They haven't had this franchise for 20, 30, 40, even 50 years like the Canucks and been through those trials and tribulations. And you don't have those generations of fans, right? So if things don't start going their way, they lose interest very quickly. And especially in a city like Vegas where, there's a lot of other entertainment. Yeah, I feel like if you're not winning and you're not winning big in Vegas, the attention span of the fans there in the desert is it kind of weans at some points.
Yep. So Joel put out a tweet yesterday, and I'm just pointing this tweet out because he asked someone not to but someone did at him, and I love it. I'm looking forward to this. This is Perry and Stahl better than Spezza and Thornton. Don't at me.
Now, I should qualify this before we get into this. I'm not saying all time, obviously, right? Like, I'm talking about, like, which two players would you rather sign in 2021?
Fair enough. And
for me,
the
it's
record,
those two all day. I mean, you can see the results both in the regular season and the postseason. Like, what an addition both of those players have been. And, typically speaking, if Jonathan Drouin were in this series, what a different series that would be for one. But for two, you probably wouldn't be seeing Eric Stahl, right? And then you see that the things that Eric Stahl has been able to bring to the Habs, right? Not only playing defensive hockey, but he contributes offensively as well. I mean, what a huge addition where, you saw Spezza get, I think, 1 or 2 for the Leafs there in their run, but there wasn't a lot from Joe Thornton. There wasn't a lot from Jason Spezza, and you're seeing the complete opposite in terms of Corey Perry and Eric Stahl.
I'm going to have to disagree with you, only partially, though. So I think that Perry is by far the better of those four. He's come out, and we talked about this on the last pod, just how good that signing was by Marc Bergevin to get Corey Perry into that lineup and have him for the entire year, because he knew that if they got in, that he would be one of the game breakers and the difference makers within that lineup, and he has been. And I think he is the one that is that's pulling that line, saying "Follow me, boys," and nothing against Noel Armia. I have a lot of time and respect for that player, and he's played very, very well throughout this playoffs. I just think that as far as Stahl goes, I think he's a good player. Obviously, I think that he definitely brings a presence out there. But I would have Spezza over Eric Stahl. Spezza. I look who he was playing with. He was playing with Joe Thornton, Jumbo Joe, slow guy. Joe Thornton. He didn't make a difference in the playoffs. But the amount of times that I saw Spezza without the puck make a good defensive play, make a great pass. I think that if it was between those four and not just separate of Thornton and Spezza versus Stahl and Perry, if it was just between those four, I'd do Perry and Spezza, and then the other two can pound sand somewhere else.
I mean, there's definitely more upside for Jason Spezza offensively versus Eric Stahl, but the one big thing that I keep drawing back on, and my counterpart at News 1130, Ryan Littemark, who's also a really big Habs fan, he made a good point where Stahl and Perry have both won cups, right? And having that kind of veteran presence in the dressing room to be like, guys, we're down in this game, we can still claw back or what have you, or just having the confidence to close things out. I think that's a huge, huge dividends. Now, I understand that both Spezza and Thornton have played in a cup final, but they didn't win, right? And I think there's a little bit of difference in terms of knowing how to get there and knowing how to climb the mountain once you're there. And for me, yeah, that's just a big factor. Now, I'm going to be completely honest. Like in the past, I haven't always been a fan of all the moves that Marc Bergevin has made as GM of the Montreal Canadiens. But man, what a terrific job he did assembling this team this year. When we came in, when we did the preseason taping, I said they're perhaps the most deepest team down the middle and in their forward group in the NHL. And you're seeing that pay dividends now when we're in the playoffs, deep in a playoff run. And the guys you would be thinking are the black aces are actually scoring goals for you out there, right? So the depth and his ability to make the kind of right moves, hats off to him because, like you said, I wasn't always a big fan, but hey, man, like he's obviously got the right chemistry and right mix of guys right now because the Montreal Canadiens they're playing lights out hockey, man. Like it's exciting hockey to watch for sure.
If I remember correctly, I said it would come down to how the young centers would play. And you've got Nick Suzuki, who's right up there in playoff scoring and playing really, really well. And Kotkaniemi stepped up and has been able to contribute as well. And I think that's almost as big a story. I know the Corey Perry's getting a lot of press just because of, he looks like a warrior out there with that gigantic scar on his nose now. And then Cole Caulfield is such a great story as well. Somehow I think Nick Suzuki is being is under the radar when you think about the storylines in this.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and because in terms of playoff scoring for the Habs, it's Toffoli and Suzuki. Toffoli's got 14 points, Suzuki's got 13, and then no one else is in double digits. Like everyone, you've got a bunch of 9, 8, and 7, but no one's talking. Not enough people are talking about how well Nick Suzuki is playing in these playoffs.
Well, the reason why we're talking about this fourth line is because they are the top 6. They're 3 of the top 6 scorers within that lineup. And yeah, you have Armia with 8 points. You have Eric Stahl with 8. Then you have Perry with 9. So I think both are very, very polarizing in their own separate ways. Because Nick Suzuki, he's a hell of a player. And talk about that Pacioretty trade. Whew. You think that they would want Pacioretty over Nick Suzuki? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, as a Habs fan, I'm absolutely loving that because, when Patches was on the Habs, I didn't hate him, but I didn't love him, right? And I think Nick Suzuki can bring you a lot more upside, and the ceiling for me for Nick Suzuki is a lot higher than it ever was for Max Pacioretty. So
he's a center, and when I looked at this matchup, I came down it's very similar teams in terms of build. Very deep down the wings, a solid goaltending, solid blue line, and you had just some question marks up the middle, and not necessarily because of skill, just because of they may not have done it before. You have Chandler Stevenson centering Pacioretty and Stone. You have William Karlsson and the misfit line, and then with Stevenson going down, they've been struggling to figure out. They were struggling to figure out who to slide in there, and I think that was so huge. Meanwhile, on the Habs, you've got Suzuki stepping up and playing fantastic, and like a true number 1 center. You've got Kotkaniemi and Stahl and all both playing really well and bringing that depth. And right now, the Habs centers are outplaying the Golden Knights centers. And that's the biggest. I think I would say that's the biggest difference in this series. Yep. Yeah, Carey Price has been very good, and he's out goaltended Fleury and Leonard in the games. But I think the big one is the matchup up the middle, and the Habs are winning it, and they've shut down basically all the stars of the Golden Knights, and we're talking about, they talked about last night how Riley Smith is the leading point getter for Golden Knights playoff in the playoffs all time, and he's done nothing. That misfit line is absolutely just invisible. You had Chandler Stevenson going down, and you're like, okay, and then maybe that the Stone Pacioretty line may bump back a bit, but you have that misfit line that has had like Marchessault, Smith, and Carlson have all scored 20, 30 goals in their careers, and they've been nowhere to be found, and that's huge. They need one of those lines to step up and just take over a game, and if they have a chance to come back to win the next two games.
The other thing with Vegas that was a bit mysterious to me is no Ryan Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy that does bring the energy. I was really surprised he didn't play in this series or in the game last night, because I think he would have been an interesting addition, but it feels like he hasn't had that impact that in this series. Like, and I'm not saying that he needed to go in there and clog heads, but it certainly feels like the Vegas Golden Knights play a lot more energetic with Ryan Reeves in the lineup at home than they do without him.
Yeah, they need that energy. They need that spark, and that's what he's supposed to do. I mean, obviously, DeBoer is making some lineup decisions that are kind of questionable within that, because why else would you have a Ryan Reeves on your team? It's for these moments within the playoffs that he could make a momentum shift, get the crowd back into it, and maybe like you said, Kev, spark some energy. Because, God, it's just like it's very, very weird that they are where they are right now, the Vegas Golden Knights, because all that we've seen is them be successful, and not having that spark is massive.
Yeah.
And it's not as if he's being buried by and hemmed in his own zone when he's out there. Like I just pulled up his possession stats, and he's at 55% positive shot attempts. Like I think they need to bring him in. I know they don't necessarily like playing him on the road, but I think they need to in Game 6 in Montreal, because you need to make Montreal feel a little uncomfortable, and make them think twice about making passes, and maybe rush a play here or there so you can capitalize on it.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that Reeves brings that kind of rough and tumble style that you're looking for, especially in the playoffs, right? But for me, I think that the decision to leave Reeves off the lineup yesterday, I think it became evident for Peter DeBoer that, his team and especially his forward group isn't scoring. Maybe by switching the lineup and getting, a slower kind of bruiser style guy out of there, and perhaps a more offensive talent and more upfront, offensive pressure might have been good for him to kind of get that forward group going. But obviously, it didn't make a lick of difference because, besides that double clutch goal by Pacioretty, you just didn't see it. One of the big things for me that I noticed in this series, though, is the Vegas Golden Knights power play is non-existent. I mean, the Montreal Canadiens penalty kill they've been absolutely lights out. Like, now, Montreal Canadiens are of 90% penalty killing in a single postseason. So I think right now they're sitting at third all time in highest penalty killing percentage in a postseason. Jesus. Now, which is like unreal, right? And they've gone 12 straight games now without giving up a power goal. To me, that's unreal. Like, absolutely unheard of in today's modern NHL, right? Especially with, high-end scoring and stuff. And I understand that Vegas doesn't have a Nathan McKinnon, or they don't have like an elite down the middle guy that you expect to bury a goal almost every single power play. I get that, but what a fascinating story this has become that, even though, and this is a debate for another day, but even though perhaps the zebras on the ice aren't so friendly with Montreal in terms of giving them power plays or equal opportunities anyways, but in spite of all that, they've still been able to kill every single thing thrown at them, man. And I think that is a big difference maker in this series so far, for sure.
It is the longest postseason streak since the NHL began tracking goals since in 1933.
Crazy. It's crazy.
No, just to be aware, Tyler wasn't alive then, and I wasn't either. So I wanted to clarify, I did not see any of those games. Anyway.
Well, if you look at their Vegas's number one power play, it's Smith, Carlson, Marchessault on top, and then you have Martinez, a big offensive threat, Martinez, and Shea Theodore. That line is not, like Sean was talking about, the misfit line. They haven't been producing, so why the heck are you having them on the same line again? And hoping that it's going to change. The definition of insanity is right there. Like, switch it up. Put Chandler Stevenson down on that line. Put Wild Bill on that top line with Pacioretty and Stone, or even like on the power play. The only offensive threat right now that's on that number one power play is Shea Theodore. That's it, in my mind. Marchessault is non-existent in this series. I swear I haven't seen him.
I've seen him. He's had some really good opportunities.
But like he needs to capitalize. Like that's what he does. Period. And stop. And that's the biggest difference, is that the depth are outscoring the top lines on Vegas, the depth of Montreal, and that is the biggest difference.
Just back to the Canadiens, unless there's anything else, I want to. Is there any, before I make this comment? Is there anything else on the series we need to talk about? Because my comment is going to be a transition. To Marc Bergevin, it's really, this is a fascinating lesson, because everyone was Subban for Weber. What a terrible trade that was. Pacioretty, why are you only getting a Nick Suzuki? What the hell are you thinking, Sergachev for Drouin? Fair, which, by the way, that's actually fair. He deserved all the criticism in the world for that trade.
Yeah, I didn't like that one when it happened. The other two, I was kind of like, we'll see, right? Like when I remember, and I was working in the shoe swap, not far from where Shea Weber's house is, on the day he was traded. And I remember thinking to myself, like, holy shit, they just traded away a Norris defenseman for a Norris defenseman. Like, what a blockbuster, right? And everybody kept asking me kind of what I thought about it. And it was like, well, ask me in 3 or 4 or 5 years. I don't know right now. Like, quite honestly, like, obviously PK was a bit younger, but man, and the other one, like I said, Patches for Suzuki. And it was like, oh, do we know what Suzuki is yet? Like, we know what Pacioretty is, but again, I got to tip my hat to Marc Bergevin, because when he made those moves, save for the Drouin for Sergachev, because I'm still not a fan of that one. But like, we had to wait a bit to see how they panned out. And obviously, the Canadiens being 1 win away from the Cup final, I mean, something worked, right? So,
but here's the transition part, is you have to at times not overreact and just wait and be patient and see how a trade is going to work out. Which leads us to our next topic, which is in about 10 minutes from now, the Sedins will have their first media conference as part of Canucks management. Henrik and Daniel will be joining the front office of the Vancouver Canucks, and let's just break this down. Maybe we'll start with Joel, kind of get his thoughts, and then we'll kind of go Sean, Devin, and see what we are thinking about this.
Okay, so when I first heard that the Sedins were potentially, or at least negotiating in terms of trying to get into the Canucks management, it kind of scared me a little bit as a Canucks fan. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, you saw how sour that relationship with Trevor Linden turned out. And that was the one big thing when I first heard this story, a month ago or whatever, when it first broke, when we heard, the Canucks might be, adding the Sedins in some kind of capacity in the front office. I just thought, oh boy, I hope it's not a here we go again. But I think that in the positions that they're in, obviously, like, what are they, special assistants to the or special advisors to the GM, right? Now, in that capacity, in that role, that's obviously not a big, as big as a bite as team president and Trevor Linden tried to step into, right? With having almost no experience beforehand. I think that's kind of where it soured, and perhaps the Aquilinis kind of learned their mistake in saying, hey, you know, like, these guys don't have any front office experience. We want to have them in the front office, but maybe instead of giving them, you know, these top tier roles where somebody with a lot more experience could probably handle a little better, maybe we'll just kind of bring them in gradually and kind of get them used to the process here. Be around Benning, be around all the other scouts and see how the interworkings of front office management actually works before they, you know, potentially move into some other kind of role besides special advisor to the GM. If they want to move up into, you know, a dual role of team president or president of hockey ops or what have you. At least I like that this move gives them the opportunity to kind of learn on the job before being thrown to the wolves and just really holding their feet to the fire and seeing, hey, can these guys do anything, right? I feel like the way they're going about it with kind of introducing them gradually, letting them get used to the way everything works behind the scenes, that transition from a player to the front office isn't, you know, it's not an easy thing. And you see a lot of really good and smart hockey people fail miserably at that, right? And I'm not saying that Daniel and Henrik will, but what I am saying is that, yeah, I really liked that there is an arm's length, that they tried to kind of keep them in the organization. They're going to hopefully build them into some kind of role that's more than what they're being given this morning, but to do that gradually and not have them set them up for failure, more or less.
Yeah, from what I was hearing, this was what they wanted. They wanted to start from more or less the bottom and work their way up and learn as they went. The way that Steve Yzerman did, Rob Blake did. Not necessarily Joe Sakic as well started in this special advisor role.
Absolutely.
I think he got fast tracked a little bit quicker than those other two, but I think they want to learn from it, and I think that's fine. That from what it sounds like is they're going to be focusing more on player development as well as the AHL team, the Abbotsford insert name here, and I think that's fantastic. I think it's a great place to start because if you learn about that and then you slowly transition into more of the administrative side with contract negotiations and trades, that and you surround yourself with smart people to do that, then they can learn a lot of that as they go. You do not want to throw them into the deep end like Trevor Linden did to himself and went directly to the top as a team president because they don't have that experience. You want someone with experience in that role. So yeah, I think I'm excited for this because I think it has the potential to be something that they can build on and it can really help the organization. And I know some people are going to disagree with me on this, but I think this is low risk as well. Because if you go in there, say like we want to try it, and then a year later it's like, no, this isn't exactly what we were looking for, and they move on, that's nothing. To me, that's nothing. As long as it's that. If there's any sort of issues, like legit issues, not just fans and media speculating, but legit issues that come out there, then that's something to worry about. But if it's just them going and trying it and then realizing it's not what they want, it's still a low risk hire here, and you still are going to get a little bit of a PR bump here. But I think if things go well, the hockey minds that the Sedins are and how they approach things, I think is going to be very good for the Canucks to have within the organization, even if right now it is just with the Abbotsford team and player development.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. Overall, I think it's low risk. I think it's a good move by the Sedins and the organization to not get them overwhelmed with what they have to do as let's say what Trevor Linden did. But my curious mind is thinking, okay, are they going to be the first co-GMs ever in the NHL?
How could they not be, right?
how fun would that be? You know, I think that'd be kind of a cool adage if they do decide to pursue front office operations and climb the ladder. Like, you know, say for here in Calgary, Craig Conroy has done here as well. And he has been talked about potentially making that next step not within Calgary's organization, which could be a possibility considering Brad Treliving is potentially on his last legs here and he could step into that role, but for other jobs as well. And I'm not saying that you would see the Sedins leave Vancouver, because I don't think that's a remote possibility, because they love the city and their kids are there and all that stuff. So good on the Canucks for I think doing this properly and actually giving them the chance to thrive as a special advisor to the GM.
My concern, and I'm not saying this as a criticism, this is because I think I agree with everything that everyone is saying here. My concern is from the fan base perspective, and let's face it, we're about to hear tweets about what Jim Benning has stumbled through another press conference. We know that this is going to happen. But I'm concerned that there's going to be some fans that are going to expect the Sedins to take on more of that role, especially the front of camera role, than is necessary, if I'm making any sense. And it's because there is a consumer confidence issue with Jim Benning when he speaks. It's just like, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I honestly think Jim Benning would benefit greatly by going to Toastmasters. Seriously, he needs to go to and I say that as someone that has went to Toastmasters. It would be huge for him. But I think that there's so many people like, okay, look, Benning to Stammer again. Where are the Sedins? Especially when things go low during the season and there's some sort of slump, and we need that inspirational. And I hope that I honestly hope that the Sedins don't spend a lot of time in the press other than today, where this is deserved. Even maybe the draft, or some important times when it is. But I don't want to see a lot of Sedins in the media next year. I think that would be a detriment to their development.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a blessing in disguise a little bit, having the Sedins be able to be, at the forefront in terms of like either answering questions for the media or being on camera or what have you. Because not only are they comfortable with that, but it takes a little bit of that burden off of the shoulders of Jim Benning, right? Where, as you said, yeah, everybody knows Jim Benning isn't always doesn't always give the best answers when being asked questions by the media, because obviously we don't have all the information. I think moving forward, I'm kind of with you, where I hope that the fan base doesn't turn to the Sedins and be like, I want you guys to explain what these moves were. I want you guys to, be the forefront on camera, because that's not their job. That's not their responsibility. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they're not the ones making the decisions and pulling the strings. They could tell Benning what they think until they're blue in the face, but it's still Jim's decision at the end of the day. And I feel that the person making the decisions, the person pulling the strings, should be the one responsible for having to address that with the media.
Yeah, I'm with you, Kev. I hope that they're not in front of the camera that often, because if the reports are true and that it is going to be player development in AHL, that is their focus, they shouldn't be in front of the cameras to discuss anything but that. If they're discussing potential trade, like your long-term direction of the team or stuff that Jim Benning should be answering, that's a major red flag. The other thing is, I got a response to my tweet when I put out there saying I like this move, asking whether or not they're going to be the next GMs of the Canucks, and my answer is I hope not, because I think Jim Benning's on his last legs as the GM of the Canucks, and if it's one more year under Jim Benning, they're not going to be ready. You want them to take 2-3 even more years to slowly build up that the experience, so that they can so that they're ready to take that role on when they get there. And so it's if you're looking at this as a potential succession plan, there is another step in between. There's going to be an intermediary between this current regime and then the Sedins if it happens. So I think that's one thing is temper your expectations of what the Sedins are going to be doing. I really hope that they're going to be more behind the scenes, and I really hope that they're given the proper time to build up their experience in the front office and not be rushed into higher profile roles just because of where this team is and this organization is and where the confidence of the fan base is with this current front office.
Well, and you definitely know that if they get in front of a camera and a microphone, that the media is definitely going to ask those questions to try and stir the pot, because it just seems like that's what the media does within Vancouver market. Well, not all of them, obviously, but definitely some of them.
I'm right here. I'm right here.
You're going to hear Joel ask him, so when are you going to become the GM? Huh? Well, what's that timeline like? This poking in product. No, but honestly, that is what's going to happen if they go in front of a camera.
You're not wrong.
Yes, they definitely will benefit by not doing that within the first little bit, and maybe do it when at the draft or when it actually matters to what their role is.
I am interested now with the Sedins there in terms of player development. I'm not saying if it drastically changes the draft strategy, but I am curious what the draft strategy will be with the Sedins. If they have any influence in that. So I was just thinking about a guy that I think would be an interesting fit that I wouldn't take at 9. Absolutely not. I wouldn't mock draft at 9, but a guy like Isaac Rosen from Sweden would be a really good fit, and just sort of he doesn't remind me of the Sedins, but he sort of has this sort of a Sedinery kind of that style that I think would be a good fit. So I am interested in the strategy now with them there.
I don't think it changes much in terms of at least this draft, because they're just coming in now. How much scouting have they done, right? Yeah. I'm sure they'll ask them what attributes they want. They see are key attributes for prospects to come in, and what they'd be looking for. But I think they're the strategy or who the organization's favorites aren't going to drastically change, especially at the top of the draft. Maybe mid to late round picks, they might listen more towards what the Sedins are thinking in terms of the attributes they would look at. We're talking about two players who came in as second and third overall picks. They took a while to really develop into the players, the superstars that they were at the peak of their careers. So they understand the what needs to be done to get there, especially for players who aren't necessarily super physically gifted. Because I think we can all agree that the Sedins weren't necessarily super physically gifted, but their hockey minds was their hockey minds, and then they turn themselves into fitness freaks, and going from chubby teenagers who are really smart,
eating sour peas and Swedish berries all day.
Yeah,
like you said.
to guys who are now in retirement are running marathons and everything for fun. So I think that that's why it's more about player development in the AHL for them. So I don't think we're going to see too much at least in terms of this draft, in terms of that they're not going to have that much input, but maybe in years going forward, if this relationship continues to grow and they take on more responsibilities.
Yeah.
One thing I would have liked to see before this decision was made is, for me at least, I wish they would have, if the Sedins knew that they wanted this role within the Canucks organization, I would have preferred that they kind of slid things along a year ago or 2 years ago. Because for me, the loss of Judd Brackett and having that, brilliant mind in the scouting department in Vancouver would have been a big plus for the Sedins to be able to work side by side with him and kind of pick his brain a little bit before Brackett moved on, right? You can kind of get an idea, hey, here's, what I think about the scouting. Here's how I think the team is going to be playing in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the road, what kind of core we're going to have, what kind of, overall outlook on the team would be, right? And I feel that if they had that time to work alongside Judd Brackett with, who was, somebody who had developed and picked all these people and kind of tried to make all these players that they're drafting fit the overall image or mindset of the team, I feel like that would have probably helped them a lot in this role, being that, they're going to be basically doing that. They're going to be looking at, who can we add from the minors or in a draft capacity to try and help this team out, right? So that's one thing I would have loved to seen before Brackett hit the road, but I'm super stoked. I mean, I think that, like you said, their hockey IQ and their minds are what's going to be their value in this role, right? And hopefully that the success and the hockey IQ that we saw on the ice spills over to the front office, and they can continue the trend of both drafting well and developing players really well, because in the past 4 or 5 years, despite some thin seasons on the ice, the well, if you will, or the stockpile that Vancouver has in the back end there, it's starting to pile up, and we're starting to see the dividends of that in a few players there. So,
well, the 2022 draft is going to be just, I know everyone's thinking about the 2021 draft, but the 2022 draft is going to be quite fun. You got Shane Wright, you've got Matthew Savoy, you've got Brad Lambert. Don't forget him. There's a few other ones in here. Danila Yurov. It's going to be a really good draft. So if the Sedins are in that strategy, there's a lot of players for them to pick with. But that's a.
Sorry, Kev. That draft that you're talking about too, it won't be as much of a crapshoot as this year's hockey draft because these players haven't been playing. Like, they got a shortened season and what have you, and those are the only times that scouts have been able to have a look at these players. Assuming that everything goes ahead with the dub and the CHL and junior leagues and stuff across Canada and in North America for this upcoming 21-22 season, the scouts are going to have the looks that they usually do and stuff, and they're going to know which players are kind of better, right? And having that in the front office, it's going to pay dividends. Like I said, this year is a crapshoot. No one's really sure how things are going to turn out because the scouts haven't got, enough time to kind of look at the players. But yeah, like you said, next year I think it's going to be a special one, and it gives a lot of teams the opportunity of actually looking at the players, right? Instead of just kind of, oh, well, he did this a year and a half ago. We hope he's developed since then.
That's
also where the Sedins are going to come in if they're focusing on player development too.
Yeah.
Them working with Chris Higgins, because he's been the sort of the spearheading that aspect with the Canucks and has done a pretty good job. And you listen to players like Jack Rathbone talk about what he's done, how he's been important to his development since being drafted is huge. And so if they can work with him and they can have a bit more of a comprehensive player development program, we can start seeing players like a Cole Lind, like a Jonah Gadjevich, Jet Wu, these second and third round and later picks starting to hit. That's going to be huge for the Canucks, because you need to hit more than just your first round picks to be successful in the NHL. And right now, the only player that Jim Benning's drafted that has done anything outside of the first and second rounds is maybe Nikita Triamkin, and then he went away after a couple seasons. So they need someone like a Will Lockwood, to be able to step in and create some. To start creating the farm system again, because now that Podkolzin's coming over, it starts to get a little thin again.
Fair. The other thing that now we've had the Sedins and Trevor Linden, and just sort of the Mount. We would probably say it's they would be part of the if Grouse Mountain developed an announcement that there was to be a Mount Rushmore and they were going to put heads on the mountain, the Grouse Mountain, the Sedins would be there. Trevor Linden would be there. I think we can agree that those three would be there. There's no debate on that.
No.
Okay.
Not for me, no.
So if we needed to add a fourth,
that's where the debate starts, Kevin, right there.
And it's only players, right?
Sure.
Because if you open it up to say coaches and GMs, and you're throwing Pat Quinn on there, and that argument's that this discussion's done and dusted. But if it's just players, you've got Naslund, and Smeal and Bure would be, I think, you're the big three that you'd be discussing.
You don't mean you wouldn't put Mark Messier up there, Sean? Sorry. Yeah, I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
I think if you were had a campfire as you were hiking up Grouse Mountain and you needed wood, you could have Mark Messier wood where you could burn the wood as your fire.
Or a urinal with Mark Messier's face on it?
Maybe, yeah,
something like that kind of thing. Or
I have a hot take about Mark Messier that Oiler fans will never like, but that I will say.
What, that he's not the best captain?
He's not. No, he's not, actually. He's not.
I would have Naslund up there, personally. Just from an outsider's perspective, what he meant to that to the Canucks organization. He's third over all-time in points. Of course, behind Hank and Daniel, but I think that you can't go wrong with doing that. He was captain, centered the West Coast Express line, I think that it would be a bit of a miss from my perspective if Naslund wasn't on there. So it would basically be 3 Swedes and 1 Canadian.
That'd be a tough one for sure, because all time when you look at the history of this franchise, obviously Stan Smeal was a big part of that in the 82 Cup run, and being the face of the franchise for such a long time, especially in the early stages, right? And then you kind of get that transition period where Trevor Linden, right, and you get the 94 Cup run, and then you get the Sedins and the 2011 Cup run. So I understand wanting to add Smeal there, and I understand wanting to add Naslund because he's also kind of one of those kind of transition, like the West Coast Express from the Trevor Linden 94 Cup era all the way up to the season before they went on that 2011 Cup run, right? But for me, if I had to pick one, if you put a gun against my head, for me it'd be Pavel Bure. And I understand, he played the least amount of time in a Canucks uniform out of any of the three. And I get that. I understand that, he's not on the stat sheet anyways. He's not where Marcus Naslund is or some of those other guys. But in terms of knowing a player from the franchise, if you had to pick one player from the Canucks franchise all time, who would you pick? For me, it's probably Pavel Bure, right? And I understand, you have Linden and you have Bure from that 94 run. And if you want to space it out, yeah, I could understand the argument for Smeal or Naslund a little more. But just in terms of both the fans knowing who they are and bringing excitement to the team and perhaps being, the best player that's ever put on a Canucks uniform for a single season or what have you. For me, yeah, if you're going to put the Sedins and you're going to put Trevor Linden up there, for me, Pavel Bure is the one that rounds it out on that Canucks Mount Rushmore.
If we didn't say coach, but if we have a coach, a little path, Pat Quinn for sure. You also have to put Roger Nielsen in there. You have to. I certainly have a spot for him.
Well, Quinn is a player and coach, right? So, and GM.
Yeah.
So he wears a lot of hats there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I also would put Brian Burke somewhere on the mountain. I think he deserves a spot there for sure.
There's 4 spots, Kev.
Yeah, I know. Hear me out. In terms of you're
we'll
on
just
the
have
hike.
2 mountains side by side.
Yeah. But I'll throw one that wasn't mentioned. I would throw in Roberto Luongo. He got the 2011 Cup final. I know he's a bit polarizing. He also got the Canada gold medal. I think that there's a story there. I think I would throw his name in there. I think he has to be recognized in some way, shape, or form. And it's no disrespect to everybody else that you've mentioned, because I don't disagree, but I would throw Roberto Luongo in that conversation.
If I had to pick one other player, if put in that conversation, I think Bobby Lee would probably be in that conversation for me as well, along with, Smeal and Bure and whoever's going to make that fourth. Like, he deserves to be up there, but yeah, no, I mean, franchise goaltender, right? And like you said, Kevin, there's a lot of history there, and you're right, he is polarizing, but not because of anything he did necessarily on or off the ice. It's more so his contract and how that's still hemming the Canucks in this season. He retired how many years ago now, right? So they're a little sour in terms of that for Vancouver fandom, but yeah, no, I agree for sure.
My contract sucks.
Oh, I'm not upset with Luongo about that one. That's full on Gary Bettman and Brian Burke, actually. So if you want to be mad at anyone, and you're talking about questioning that, like, you've got Brian Burke, who's still adamant that the Canucks broke a rule that other teams have, and they're the only ones that seem to be punished for it. So
true story.
Yeah. But I think I'm leaning towards Bure as well. Most exciting player to ever play for the Canucks. He's the only player that has over a point per game as a Canuck. It's, to me, yes, it was contentious in how everything went down when he left, but yeah, I still put him as he is the most exciting player to ever play for the Canucks. But in 10, 15 years, I think we're going to have to reevaluate this. And there's potentially two players on this Canucks team right now that you'd have to you'd be putting up there with Quinn Hughes and Petey. I just sorted it on quanthockey.com for per game. Points per game, and you've got Bure in first. Don't forget about how amazing a player Alex McGillney was. He was just under point per game as a Canuck. You got Mike Walton third, but he only played 115 games. And then you've got JT Miller and Pedersen in fourth and fifth for points per game as a Canuck. And I think we all know that as much as JT Miller's there, the real star there is Pedersen. And then you've got Quinn Hughes is 30th as a defenseman with only 1, 2, including the 3 defensemen ahead of him, which was Paul Reinhart, Claire Alexander, and then the just recently deceased Tom Kerbers.
It's too bad you mentioned Pedersen or Hughes, because I had a Louis Eriksson joke all lined up, and you just, because you said Pedersen and Hughes, there's no point in making a Louis Eriksson joke. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Well, someone has to stop you from making bad jokes. So
you're going Louis Eriksson. I was going to go Jake Virtanen.
Oh yeah, I was also the Eriksson Virtanen part of it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Jake Virtanen should be anywhere near any path of Definitely put him over. Yeah. Do we have time to talk about Vladimir Tarasenko quickly here?
Yeah, I would love to.
I don't want to address the nonsensical rumors that happened this week involving Tkachuk, because those turned out to be bullshit. But there seems to be a bit of a move in Flames Twitter that the Flames should go after Vladimir Tarasenko, and I want to burn this bridge. Please do. This is a guy that was injured during the Blues Cup run. I'm not going to okay, look, is Vladimir Tarasenko a talented guy that can score goals? Yeah, sure, when he is healthy, but he's not healthy at this particular point in time, and his game is going on a complete downward trend. He is not what the Flames need at this particular point in time. And what Sean, you had a salary up. What was it?
$7.5 million for the next 2 years.
That is not a guy that the Flames need to be going after at all. That is actually the opposite of what the Flames need to be doing in terms of, like, you look at this playoffs and what we're kind of the theme of this playoffs, and kind of it's those players that are getting into the fabric of the game, the Suzuki's, the Points, the Corey Perrys of the world. Even, when the Islanders are on, I mean, I don't think they're as bad as 8-0, but when Brock Nelsons, I'll throw that guy in there. They need those types of forwards, and I just don't see any reason why you want to spend $7.4 million to bring in a Vladimir Tarasenko. I want to stop that conversation on Flames Twitter, because it is nonsense.
It is complete.
It's about
nonsense,
as nonsense as the Flames going after Jack Eichel. Anyway.
On a different level, for sure. Vladimir Tarasenko has had 3 shoulder surgeries since April 2018. 3. And that's talking about a sniper within this league. His numbers are pretty decent, considering the amount of games that he has played in the past 2.5 years. But overall, he's in a downward trend. He has not shown any. When he came back this year, he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything for the St. Louis Blues. And overall, I don't think he's a shadow of a player as he once was. Let's not get hung up on the name Vladimir Tarasenko because of what he's done in the past. He's 29 years old and coming off those surgeries. And that cap hit, it makes 0 sense for Calgary Flames to be going after that player, let alone the Matthew Tkachuk trade. You can shut that down right now, because if Tkachuk is in his early 20s and is on you don't know what his ceiling is, and Vladimir Tarasenko, he's on his way down. I really hope that he can find some sort of traction within the NHL so he can have a successful end to it, because I think that's something that a lot of players do deserve. But yeah, him being in the red and white, it would make 0 sense for me. And I hope, I know that Brad Treliving is a smarter human being than that. At least I hope.
The only way you go after Tarasenko is you're buying low. You're buying low, and you're either offloading a bad contract, or you're getting some salary retention. And why would St. Louis do that?
Exactly.
He still has upside. He still has the upside as a 20, 30 goal scorer in this league. And why would you sell low on that? Unless they're desperate to try and offload that contract, but I don't see who would. It's not a smart move in a flat cap era, in the flat cap for the next couple years, while his contract is for another 2 years, to be able to. It just doesn't. You're not going to be able to fit him in, and he won't be worth that 7.5 cap hit unless he goes back to what he was doing 2 years ago. And there's major questions on whether or not he can, after, as you said, the multiple shoulder surgeries that he's gone through.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys. The big thing for me is not only the age difference, but the fact that Tarasenko is coming off a major surgery, right? And he has been a big question mark these past couple seasons. Now, I think Tkachuk is signed for this 21-22 season, and then he's an RFA. Is that right?
I
think so.
I think he has 1 year. Yeah. I think
Tarasenko, in addition to the 2021-22 season next year, he's also signed for 1 year after that. So you get a little bit more term out of him, which I could see being kind of the upside if you're the Calgary Flames and you've been negotiating with Tkachuk and you know that you're miles apart and another team might offer sheet him, and then you're going to end up paying more than you have. I could see the understanding of, hey, maybe, maybe we see what there is left in the tank for Tarasenko, and perhaps we don't think Tkachuk fits our system here, or fits in, what have you. But that's the only way that I could really see the Calgary Flames kind of making a move. Because, I mean, if you ask anybody in the media business or anybody like a casual hockey fan, like, hey, would you trade Tarasenko for Tkachuk straight up? They'd probably ask Calgary to throw in a little something more, right? Even though he's injured and what have you. And I agree with you, Devin, where Tkachuk's ceiling, we don't know what it is yet. There's a lot of upside there that could he be, a 40-goal scorer or what have you? Like, we don't know what he can develop into. But that being said, I mean, like I said, if Calgary has already kind of made the decision, like, that, Tkachuk just doesn't fit here, or he's just not gelling with the guys or the management or what have you, I could see them wanting to make a move. But would a move for, a question mark like Vladimir Tarasenko kind of be the way they want to go about it? Probably not, right? Like, I wouldn't want to make that move if I were a Canucks fan and you asked me, like, hey, right now we'll trade you, Tarasenko for somebody like JT Miller or someone like that. It's like, like in if you asked me that 3 years ago, maybe, right? But it's 2021. There's a big question mark in terms of his health, and yeah, I mean, coming back from that and having such a huge cap hit, even though I think the season after next it does go down. In terms of real money paid, but yeah, that'd be a tough move to make, man. And I think if you get rid of a player like Chuck on a team like Calgary, you're really sending a message that things didn't work. We're looking to shake this thing up, and we're looking to kind of try and compete now, which I just don't see happening in Calgary. I can see that really upsetting the fan base there, and really turning some people off if they were to give up on somebody like Tkachuk and go after somebody like Tarasenko.
Oh, there needs to be a foundational shakeup in Calgary. We've talked about that. There has to be. There's no that you.
But Vladimir Tarasenko ain't that. I think we can all agree.
That is, right? Yeah. That's not what we're. That's not what has to happen. But, I just don't see that. Like, I don't see it being Tkachuk even. I mean, you look at last year, I think that there's other unmitigating factors, including a possibility that he was still dealing with a concussion that he got in the playoffs last year, the year before, sorry. And 1 full year under Daryl Sutter. I think that they're going to try to find a way to get that work in. That would be my sense. But I do think there has to be a major shakeup in Calgary. There has to be.
And
absolutely.
The other thing is you can't be going after someone who's 29, turning 30 this upcoming season. You have to be going into what sort of meshes with your core group's age, and whatever that core group is that you decide to go with. And I think you should keep Tkachuk in that, who's 23. Then you've got Mangiapane at 25, Lindholm at 26. You've got Hannafin and Anderson both at 24. You gotta get someone in that mid 20s range, not someone who's going to be 30 by the end of next season.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at the Blues roster, and I don't have them for the expansion, I don't think. But I don't know if I'm necessarily protecting Tarasenko. I mean, he's got a no trade, so he has to waive it for them to do it. But
No, he's no trades. You don't have to. The no trade isn't.
It's a no movement.
It's no movement, right? Sorry. But I don't know if I'm protecting him. I'd have to.
Yeah, I don't know either. But overall, for Calgary, it's either going to be one of the top players of Gaudreau, Monahan, or Tkachuk potentially on their way out. They really need. I don't think that they should get rid of Tkachuk, but Tkachuk needs to be who he was the past before the Muzzin puck flip. God, I feel like I've talked about this so many times on this podcast. Holy shit! It's very, very apparent that something did happen within that locker room, within that, and I just think overall you'd be stupid to walk away from him. But if he's not going to re-sign with Calgary, and because his qualifying offer for arbitration is $9 million after this next year, automatically he could just do a 1-year deal and then walk. as UFA. So there's a lot of things that are at play within the whole Tkachuk saga in Calgary. But once again, if we're going to be coming back with outside of Tkachuk, if we're going to be coming back with Monahan and Gaudreau, I think that's a huge miss on Brad Treliving's part.
We're missing the press conference. Is there anything else we want to speak about? I'm
good.
No, I mean that's pretty much it for me. I'm just hoping that with back-to-back games here and the team traveling well, that the Habs can pull it out, man. They got 2 cracks at the Vegas Golden Goose there, and what a fun trip that would be. Another Canadian team in the Stanley Cup Final, especially in this year. Man, oh man, how cool would that be, huh?
That would be.
Maybe the North Division wasn't as bad as people were saying,
right?
I need to break that down a little bit in my own head, because I think there's so many other factors in that, but yeah.
The difference, one thing I will say, Kevin, is the difference between a good, like the divisions. You can say that they're the worst division, but it wasn't by much. And the difference between all 4 of them wasn't drastic, in my opinion. I saw someone tweet out something about that, and I responded with talking about how we're also talking about playoffs, where at most you're playing 28 games, which is 34% of what a normal season is. A normal 82-game season is. And we in today's day and age, where we talk a lot about stats and sample sizes and data, like, all it takes is to get the right matchup, to have your goalie get hot, have a couple players get hot, and that's all it takes. The margin of difference between a cup contender, a playoff team, and a bubble team, and I would even say like some of the lottery teams, is not that bad. Is not that much. All it takes is an injury here or there, 1 or 2 players playing above what you expected, and you can jump from multiple levels in that, or fall multiple levels in that, with the way the NHL is right now.
Yeah, I feel like there, like to your point there, Sean. Yeah, I feel like there is a lot of parity across the league. We heard a narrative this year over and over and over again about how the Canadian division's weak, how it's the NHL's worst division, and this and that. But you look at like the teams, who we considered cup contenders going into this playoffs. Your Tampa Bay's, your Colorado's, Vegas's, right? And we see the way they were walloping on the bottom teams of their divisions and stuff. Well, does that make them that much better than the Canadian teams that were towards the top or middle of the pack of the division in the North? Probably not, right? Like, was playing Ottawa or Vancouver or Calgary more difficult for Canadian teams than playing someone like Anaheim or San Jose or whatever it was for Vegas and Colorado? No, it was probably just as hard, right? It's just the style and the speed in which they did it. I think that's kind of what turned a lot of people's heads, and having the full season and seeing them wallop on these teams over and over and over again, and not having that diversity, right? Because typically speaking, you're going to see, Colorado come on a Western Coast road swing, and they'll play Vancouver, and then they'll play Calgary, and then they'll play Edmonton. Well, they're probably not going to win all 3. And we're looking at those 3 teams being like, they're not on the same tier as Colorado, right? But if Colorado was going to play a Vancouver, Edmonton, or a Calgary 3 games in a row, well, yeah, you're probably going to see them win 2 out of 3, or at least we're going to see them wallop on them for one of those games. And I think that kind of narrative where the North Division sucks and what have you, I think that's kind of where it came out of, because we're seeing those top tier teams just wallop on the bottom tier teams, right? And I don't feel like, save for, Ottawa and unfortunately what happened in Vancouver this year, the bottom of the tier in the North Division for me, is a lot better than the bottom of the tier in some of those other divisions. So it's kind of like, well, it might be in some people's minds weaker overall, I guess. But for me, with the travel and with everything there, I mean, I think we're just getting ahead of ourselves in saying that, teams are miles ahead of other teams, because we're seeing in this postseason, like even in the North, watching what Montreal did to Winnipeg and then or to Toronto and then Winnipeg, it's like, well, maybe they're not as far away, and that gap isn't as far as we thought. Maybe the parity is a little closer league wide.
Well, in the regular season, he also had Ottawa, and anytime that any team within the North was playing Ottawa, that was automatically a free spot on the bingo card, which is obviously not the case, right? It's so ridiculous, and it's like, that's why we play. That's why we watch the games, and that's why they play the games. Because if that's the case, Edmonton and Tampa Bay would be the front runners, or Colorado at the beginning of the year, and that's that. But that's why we play the games, to figure out what's happening. Like, honestly, it's ridiculous having those absolute statements within the NHL, and especially in the NHL, where things are so up and down, and the parity is definitely there. You can't say those things anymore.
I also think there's something to be said for adversity. And Montreal had their adversity. They had the coaching change. They had COVID. They had a number of different things that happened. And I think the travel part, the fact that they were able to travel west, I think was turned out to be an advantage in a lot of ways. So that being said as well, again, having Carey, the adversity part, I don't want people to fail, but I just think sometimes, I think it's very clear that when teams go through adversity, they seem to be able to rally through and get through things a little bit better. But that's just me. I did want to quickly touch the WHL schedules coming out today, and I am looking at the Kamloops Blazers schedule right now, and I do think that this is going to relate a bit to the NHL. The Blazers are, at the start of the year, playing some back-to-back games in Victoria. They do that on Tuesday, October 12th, Wednesday, October 13th, as well as November 5th and 6th. And then there is some home and homes with the Vancouver Giants. And I do think that this is interesting, considering that has been something that has been talked about that may with the pandemic, to see a little bit more of these types of home and home series types of things. I wonder if that's something that we see next year in the NHL. A little bit more, because it does look like they're doing that a bit in the WHL anyway.
Yeah, I really hope that the NHL starts kind of adopting that kind of schedule, sort of like they have in Major League Baseball, where you go into a city and you're going to play probably back-to-backs, right? I think it's a bit, and it's slipping off the top of my head who was commenting on this recently, but there was an NHL player that recently made comments on this, and they said, like, it's kind of ridiculous that we play, 82 different games all over all season long. Very rarely do you get, besides a homestand kind of thing, right? But very rarely do you get a lot of the games where you're kind of playing not only the same opponent, but in the same city, back to back to back kind of thing, right? So
baseball schedule.
I feel like if you pulled that away and you started giving, 2 games or 3 games, especially with divisional opponents, and just let them play like 3 at home versus an opponent, you go to their barn, play 3, you're cutting down the travel a lot for these NHL clubs, right? And when you see Major League Baseball, like I said, go in and they're playing like a 3-game, 4-game series in 4 days. Like, and I understand, you don't want to be playing necessarily every single day in hockey and what have you, but I feel like even if you did play 2 games in a row or 3 games in a row on 3 nights, you'd probably have 2 or 3 or 4 days off after that to kind of recoup and head back or head to your next destination where you're going to play, right? And I feel like that kind of not only cramming it together, but also giving them a little bit of less travel would be huge in terms of like, you're going to see players less fatigued. You're going to see teams less tired. Players probably going to get injured less because they're not so fatigued. So I'm all in favor of that, them kind of switching it up and having more of these either short distance home and homes or, play 2 here, 2 there kind of thing. I think that would be a big plus for the NHL moving forward. And especially since in this COVID season, this pandemic season, we've been seeing a lot of that where teams play, the back-to-backs and what have you, because you're only playing within your division. And it also leads for teams to kind of really develop that rivalry with their teammate or their counterparts, rather, where, on night 1 you get walloped and you want to see them come back on night 2 and see what they can do after getting beat by Tampa 8-0 kind of thing, right? It's almost like a mini playoff series within the season. And there's a lot of reasons that I think that this would work, and I'm all for it.
I think you might be talking about Jonathan Taves. He mentioned this back in November 2019. And we saw a little bit of it this year with teams playing 2, 3, 4 games against each other in a row. And I don't think it needs to be that drastic, but having a couple games, you have a back-to-back, like a Thursday, Saturday, or even a back-to-back Friday, Saturday, Toronto, Montreal, or Vancouver, Calgary, or Calgary, Edmonton would be fantastic. Even if it is both games in Calgary or both games in Edmonton, or you do have the home and homes. I think it is something they need to look at because it cuts down on travel. So that's a little bit, you're going to get better hockey with that. The more you can cut down travel, the less tired those players are going to be, the better hockey you're going to get.
Yeah.
And you can build up some, like, could you imagine going back to when Calgary and Edmonton had that rivalry going real hard a couple years ago. We had the goalie fight. Could you imagine if had they played the next day?
No. Or even after the stick flip.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what you want to sell. That's the stuff you want to sell. You want to be able to sell rivalries and stuff, and that's something that the NHL needs to look at. They need to look at making the regular season feel more important, because you now look at we're in the playoffs and everything's cup or bust, right? Doesn't matter if you win the President's Trophy. If you didn't win the cup, that season's a write-off. And that's, if you look at around the world, you can look at English Premier Soccer, English Premier League. They've got the FA Cup, they've got their other cup, and everything, but the big focus is to win the season, win the league, and that is based off of months and months and months of games. We as fans need to say, celebrate winning President's Trophies, celebrate winning divisions, create more buzz around that, even if it is create trophies and monetary incentives for winning that, and you create that, you're going to create more buzz for each of these games. So the games in the middle of February and January are going to feel a little more important. If you do that, you're not going to eat those midweek games in the middle of the winter are not going to feel as ho hum. They're going to have some more spice with them.
Yeah, I honestly, I see a lot of upside, and I don't really see the downside if they wanted to try something like this. Like, I get that some hockey traditionalists would probably be upset because you're kind of rocking the boat in terms of what's been done in the past, but fuck them. The game's progressing, so I'm all for it.
Well, even baseball tonight. Who's not going to watch a little bit of the Phillies Nationals game after the Scherzer Girardi?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, you get back at it the next night, and you want to see, hey, there's a big hit laid last night. Let's see what the team's going to do to respond, kind of thing. So then you don't have it festering and players making comments in the media and shit for like a month before they can play again. They're getting right back after it. And I also feel like you're going to see those incidents where somebody does something dirty and you're going to have to wait a month and a half to play him again. And you're going to be looking after him and you're going to be waiting until something happens, right? Whereas I think if you play the next night, you can get that shit out of the way right away, and it's squashed and buried, right? Where, like you seen Cassian and Kachuk, like, thanks for doing this, kid. Like, he had to wait a while for that to get done. If it happened the game before and then they tillied the very next night, it would have been done and over with, and we wouldn't have had to talk about that dumb shit for like 3 weeks or whatever it was until they played again. Like, it would have been done and over with. And I feel like that would help out in certain facets of the game as well.
So who do you want to play in opening night? Do you want to play the Jets or the Leafs?
Are you asking me as a Canucks fan or as a Habs fan?
As a Habs fan.
Okay. I mean, for me, I want to see the Toronto Maple Leafs again, just because of that rivalry and just because I want to rub salt in the wound a little bit, especially if the Habs can pull it off and get to this Stanley Cup final, let alone win the cup. It's just going to be like, you know, you guys thought you were the cream of the crop, and yeah, look at us go, you know.
Especially that if they do win the cup, the banner raising will happen that night.
Oh my God. It'd be so glorious to do a banner raising in front of Toronto, wouldn't it?
Oh, and you know for a fact that will happen. It has to. It has to.
If they charge pay-per-view for that ceremony, I would pay it. Like, I would absolutely pay it. And I think I'm not the only one for sure.
Oh, that would be fun. The only reason I
have a
brought
live
up the
Toronto Maple Leafs bench cam during the whole ceremony.
We're just looking down, not even respecting it.
I do a live stream with Joel and Devin just to watch both reactions.
Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah. The other reason was the whole Shifley Evans thing. That was why I brought that up. But that's the other side of it. Just one more quick thing. Looks like Trent Cull will be the head coach of Abbotsford, and Ryan Johnson will continue as the GM. Was thinking we got to get done before the media conference, but no.
I know Joel won't shut the fuck up.
No, it's my fault. So don't worry. All right. Anything? Okay, let's leave it there. How do we follow everyone?
I am BeardyConnect03 on Twitter.
I am at GordHouse09 on Twitter.
I am at Radio God on Twitter and Instagram.
All right, and Tyler TNOBLE, Chris is Schneid's SCHNEIDZ. I am KEVOLE. Podcast_hockey, Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast. Subscribe to the audio. We will be back on Friday, hopefully. Is it possible that we are celebrating the Montreal Canadiens after Jean-Baptiste Day, heading to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time since 1993? That's what we will be discussing. Check out also
I'll be sitting right there.
There we go. And we will be, and we've got some other videos out. We talked to Tyler talking about officiating. Sam Reinhart, should he be getting an offer sheet? So check all of that out as well. And we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.